Hello, class. Unfortunately, we weren't able to meet together in person today, and it looks like it may be a while before we're actually able to do so. So I've been working on what we could do to keep ourselves connected during this hiatus. Um, the first thing would be I can post lessons like this, and then hopefully we can get into a group uh, meeting to kind of have class over the internet. We'll see how this works. So I thought I'd just share a few thoughts with you in the format of the videos that I could post for you, and we'll just see how this works out. I know it's a kind of an anxious time for a lot of people, so this short little tutorial lesson that I've got for you today is really about that. It serves two purposes. One is to test out this format, but also just to give you encouragement that even though the United States and the whole world just seems to be getting turned upside down by this coronavirus, God's still in control, and He certainly urges us not to be taken, not to allow the fear to take control over us and to be anxious and everything. So, let's look at Matthew chapter 6. This is, part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And this passage here in Matthew 6, starting in verse 25, it just tells us that, God knows everything that we need, and He will take care of us. So He urges us, don't be anxious about our life, about what we'll eat, what we will drink, about our body, what we will put on, and not even about this sickness that's going around. Life is a lot more than the things that we tend to think about. Food, clothing, toilet paper, hand sanitizer. Jesus just tells us you can't add a single hour to your lifespan by being anxious, by being overcome by fear. So the first thing we need to do is just seek God, seek His kingdom, His righteousness, and then everything else will be taken care of. Now, that's not to make light of the current situation. He admonishes us here, don't be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. He acknowledges this life will be full of trouble, but whatever it is, whatever comes our way, He knows what it is and He can take care of us. So let Him do that instead of us worrying about it. That doesn't mean we don't act, we don't do prudent things, but we aren't overcome by fear. We aren't anxious. But the real question is, how do we do that? And I think Paul in Philippians gives us a clue. You fight those negative thoughts with positive thoughts. And right now the media is just bombarding us with negative thoughts. Everything's terrible. It's the end of the world. And people have reacted to that, and that's why they're hoarding toilet paper and hand sanitizer, even though it isn't logical. And we need to fight that with positive thoughts. Here in Philippians 4, Paul tells us to rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. In the midst of a time when everybody's going crazy, we need to rejoice in the Lord and let our reasonableness in the situation be known. God is at hand. He's with us. Don't be anxious about anything. But in everything, by what? By prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. In the midst of trials, pray and give thanks. Let your requests be made known to God, and His peace, which surpasses all understanding, will guard our hearts and our minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, being Paul, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. We need to fill our minds with these true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable things. And most of that's not the news right now. So my advice to you is limit your intake of all these negative thoughts that the media is putting out there, and look to those things that are just pure, lovely, commendable, honorable, excellent, worthy of praise, and think about these things. The pastor today, he said that we should think of this as being another 20 days of prayer. And I fully agree with that. It says here that we should lift up everything in prayer. So set aside what the world is saying, and through prayer and fasting, go to the Lord, talk to Him, and think about Him. And He is the most honorable, true, just, lovely, pure thing that there is. We can also renew our minds, and that will energize our actions. Most of us know Romans 12:1 and 2. We've memorized it. And, it talks about our responsibility to present our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is our spiritual worship. And do not be conformed to this world and its crazy thinking, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. But we often neglect the rest of the chapter. It says, for by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. And most of the rest of the chapter is just a list of all of these actions that we can take to demonstrate that we don't think more of ourselves than we should, that we are thinking straight, that we are executing sober judgment, and that leads us to be able to rejoice in hope, that certainty that we have that God is, and that He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him, that we can be patient in tribulation. And yes, we probably will know people who get sick from this virus, maybe even know some who die. It is tribulation. But we can rejoice in the hope of Christ through all of that. We can be constant in prayer and contribute to the needs of the saints and others, and seek to show hospitality. And finally, once again, we don't need to be anxious because we know Jesus has overcome the world. He was talking to His disciples and telling them, hey, the hour is about to come. I'm going to be crucified. And you're going to be scattered, and each is going to go to his own home, and you will leave me alone. Yet I am not alone, for the Father is with me. And the Father is with us. The Spirit is with us. And I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. Again, that peace that passes understanding. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart. Be of good cheer is what the New King James says. Why? Because I have overcome the world. God has already overcome every evil thing, every bit of tribulation that is in this world. So we need to take heart in that, be of good cheer, and simply go about what God has called us to do. So I hope these few minutes have given you a little bit of encouragement, and give me some feedback as to whether you think this sort of format would be useful for a class going forward. I could post a video like this that goes over some of the material, and then we'll have an online video conferencing session. We'll try that hopefully out next Sunday, and then we can discuss the material that's been presented in this sort of format. So let me know what you think, and I'll be praying for you this week, and I hope that you are acting like this is again the 20 days of prayer, and are taking special steps to get yourself involved in prayer and fasting to see how God would want you to react, and what He wants you to do during this time when literally our world is just getting turned upside down. So I love you all, and I'll hopefully talk to you at least electronically next Sunday.